Her bag was open on the cart. 16 people watched. She had nothing to hide. And they filed the report anyway. Dr. Naomi Hale is a Black endocrinologist, 8 days into her first week at one of Manhattan's most exclusive private hospitals. Board certified, precise. The kind of doctor who carries a personal emergency kit because she learned in residency that emergencies happen where the supplies aren't. She had just stabilized a patient on the 3rd floor when Craig Hollis, the hospital's supply chain director, stopped her cut in the middle of the nursing corridor and ordered her to empty her pockets in front of every nurse on the floor. There were no stolen vials. There never were. But Hollis filed the complaint anyway, and the hospital signed off on it without asking a single question. 3 floors above all of this, in a luxury VIP suite with amber lighting and no glucagon on the floor, a patient registered as David Cho was coding. Nobody on the care team was close enough. Naomi was. She pushed through that door and stabilized him with what was in her own bag, the same bag Hollis had just searched. And when the man opened his eyes, she saw it. A koi fish tattoo, black ink, climbing his neck like it was mid-leap. He looked at her face the way someone looks at something they intend to remember. What she didn't know yet, what nobody told her, was that what she had just walked into was not a coincidence, and what would happen in that room over the next 48 hours would end with 5 people bowed before her in silence. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The pharmacy cart was still rolling when Craig Hollis stepped in front of it. Dr. Hale? Not a question. A wall. Naomi stopped. The wheels squeaked against the linoleum. Around her, the 3rd floor nursing station quieted one person at a time, like a fire running out of air. Empty your pockets. Hollis crossed his arms. The lanyard swung against his navy polo. Both of them. She was 36 years old. She had been at Voss Meridian for 8 days. Her badge was still laminated in that particular shade of new employee plastic. Shiny, unscratched, the ink still precise. Excuse me? Insulin vials. A 3-rack. Someone took 3 units without documentation. He didn't lower his voice. He never did. Open your pockets. Open your bag. She looked at him. She looked at the nurses behind him. 2 looked down. 1 kept typing. 1 watched with the quiet attention of someone who has seen this before and knows exactly what it is. Naomi turned her coat inside out. She unzipped her bag and placed it on the cart. She did it slowly, deliberately, so there was nothing he could claim she rushed or concealed. 3 pens, her stethoscope, her father's watch, off the wrist because the clasp was broken and she kept forgetting to get it fixed. A folded lab printout, a personal dextrose kit wrapped in a zip pouch. No insulin vials. Nothing that didn't belong to her. Hollis looked at the bag. He looked at it for a long time. They were probably already disposed of, he said. I want that in writing, she said. He filed the report before she reached the elevator. She was still at the supply cart when the page came through. VIP floor, room 1214, patient unresponsive. She moved. The VIP corridor was different from the 3rd floor in the way money is different from the absence of money. Quieter, slower. The light amber-tinted and filtered. The floors carpeted in a dark gray that absorbed sound. She had been on this floor once before, briefly, during her orientation tour. She had been shown the hallway, but not the rooms. Room 1214 was at the end of the corridor, door half open. one aide standing outside with the precise stillness of someone trained not to react to anything. Naomi pushed through. The man in the bed was in his mid-40s, lean and long-limbed, lying with the careful immobility of someone who had lost consciousness gradually rather than all at once. His monitor read a blood pressure of 84/52 and dropping in small, unhurried increments. Blood glucose, 41. She called for the supply cart. The aide looked at her and said the attending physician had been paged. She said she was a physician. She was the one who paged. And where was the supply cart? There was no glucagon on the floor. She reached into her bag, the same bag that had been open on the cart 20 minutes ago, with 16 people looking into it, and pulled out the dextrose kit she had carried as habit since her second year of residency, before she understood that emergencies happen where the supplies aren't. She worked the IV line already in place. She pushed the dextrose and watched the monitor. 41 became 52. 52 became 67. She exhaled once, quietly, with her eyes on the screen. That was when he opened his eyes. They were dark eyes. Careful eyes. The kind that recorded things without appearing to. His gaze moved to the monitor, to the line in his arm, then to her face. And it stayed there, deliberate and unhurried, the way you look at something you intend to remember. On the left side of his neck, above the collar of the hospital robe, a koi fish climbed in dense black ink toward his jaw. The scales were individually rendered. The fish was mid-leap. She said, "Your glucose dropped to 41. Do you have a history of insulin resistance?" A pause. "Yes." "Who's managing your endocrine protocol?" Something moved through his expression. Not confusion, something older and more controlled. He said, "Nobody, apparently." She wrote the order on his chart. She looked at the aide in the doorway and said, "Make sure the attending gets this before he signs off tonight." She left. In the VIP corridor, she stopped. She stood with her hand against the wall and the amber light pressing against the carpet. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why a private VIP floor had run out of glucagon. She didn't know why Craig Hollis had searched her bag in front of 16 people and filed a complaint that would outlast the shift. She knew his glucose was climbing. She knew the koi fish was mid-leap on black ink. She knew he had looked at her face and not at her badge. She went back to work. Over the next 2 days, Naomi returned to room 1214 4 times. The first time was protocol. She had written the order. She needed to verify it was followed. It wasn't. The insulin delivery had been logged as dispensed at 11:40 a.m. His glucose at 2 p.m. said otherwise. She adjusted the chart, flagged the discrepancy, and left without seeing him. The second time, he was awake. The television was off. He was sitting with his hands loose in his lap, watching the window. And when she entered, he turned with the slow certainty of someone who had heard her footsteps in the corridor before she reached the door. "You again," he said. "Your morning levels were still low." She moved to the monitor without asking permission. "Someone is not following the protocol." "Someone," he repeated. "The supply cart shows delivery. The glucose reading says otherwise." She didn't look at him while she worked. "Either the documentation is wrong, or the insulin isn't reaching you." A pause. His voice, when it came, was flat and quiet. "What's your name?" "Hale. Dr. Naomi Hale." He looked at her. Something settled in his face. Not surprise, but the careful arrangement of someone confirming something they'd already suspected. "I know," he said. She stopped writing. She turned and looked at him. They searched your bag, he said. Yesterday morning, on the 3rd floor. He held her gaze without apology. I was told. She held the chart. The room was quiet. Outside the window, the city held its particular midday silence, compressed, suspended, full of things people were not saying to each other. She said, Mr. Cho. Do-yoon. A pause. My name is Do-yoon. She absorbed that for a moment. She said, Why did they tell you? He said, Because I asked. She left. The 3rd visit was close to midnight. She had been going over the supply logs at a terminal on the 2nd floor, not because anyone had asked her to, but because a discrepancy at that consistency was the kind of thing that wouldn't release her. 3 days of insulin documented as delivered to room 1214. 3 days of glucose readings that said it never arrived. She pulled the chain of custody on each delivery, one at a time, tracing each transfer point backward from the floor. The last entry in every chain belonged to the same name, Craig Hollis. The 4th visit was before the day shift. She closed the door behind her. She did not sit. The insulin assigned to this room is being redirected before it reaches you, she said. I don't know where it's going, but I know which name is at the last transfer point every single time. Do-yoon said nothing for a long moment. His hands rested on the blanket, perfectly still. His eyes moved across her face with the same attention as the first night, recording, cataloging, not reacting. Then he said, You don't know who I am. You're a patient whose insulin isn't arriving. That's not what I meant. She met his gaze. I know what you meant. The silence held between them. Not uncomfortable, not easy, but the particular silence of 2 people who have arrived at the same door from different corridors and are now both standing in front of it. His expression didn't change. Neither did hers. But neither of them looked away. He said, quietly, If you keep pulling those logs, they'll come for you. She said, They already did. She set the log printout on his side table. She left. That afternoon, Dr. Rao called her into the office with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the city spread out below them, like an argument about who had earned the view. The supply grievance had been escalated. The logs Naomi had been pulling, the ones showing Hollis's name at every terminal point, were now cited as evidence of her own irregular access to controlled substance records. She was told to take administrative leave pending review. She was told the process would be fair. She was told this with the precision of someone who had decided on the outcome before the meeting began. Naomi sat with that for a moment. She looked at the city through the glass. Then she said, Who asked you to do this? Rao said, That's not how this works. Naomi said, I know. She stood. She walked out. Her keycard deactivated at the lobby door with a short, clean beep, the sound of a decision she hadn't made being made for her. The sidewalk was cold, the kind of cold that arrives without warning in late afternoon, when the city tilts out of the sun. Naomi stood outside Voss Meridian with her phone in her hand and thought through the list of people she could call. It was a short list. She had been at this hospital for 8 days. Before that, she had spent 4 years at County General fighting a case that cost her a previous attending position, 3 professional references, and the months she should have spent at her mother's bedside after the first diagnosis. She had been right. The patient had lived. The institution had still found a way to make her pay for it. She had come here for a clean start. She dialed Minchol first. She had the number from the aide who had been in the doorway that first night. He had pressed a folded piece of paper into her hand while she was charting at the nurse's station. Without explanation, without ceremony, as if it were something she would need and she would know when. She hadn't thought about it until this moment. Min-chul answered on the second ring. "His glucose," she said. "What is it right now?" A brief pause. 58. 58. She calculated. With no active endocrine management on his chart, she had checked the care team assignments before Rao's door closed behind her, and a supply chain deliberately severed. He would be in crisis before midnight. "I need a pharmacy that will fill a controlled script under my credentials," she said. "Off hospital. My license is still active." Min-chul said, "I know one. And I need access to the building." Min-chul said, "I know a way." She stood with the city moving around her. A cab passed. A woman in scrubs walked by without looking up. There was a version of this moment where she went home, where she let whatever was happening in room 1214 belong to whoever had been paid to let it happen, where she protected herself the way everyone kept telling her to protect herself, from the first complaint at County General to Rao's office this afternoon. She had never been able to do that version. She had tried. She understood the logic of it. She just could not do it. She called the pharmacy. Her credentials cleared without issue. The pharmacist she reached had filled prescriptions for her during residency, years before she understood what residency cost. He remembered her. She explained the situation in 3 sentences. He said, "How many units?" She told him. He said, 20 minutes. She waited near the service entrance at the back of the hospital, past the loading dock where Min-chul had directed her. A security camera on the corner had been manually redirected. She did not ask how. Min-chul met her at the entrance with a cold pack in one hand and a sealed folder in the other. She took the insulin first, checked the label, checked the dosage, checked it again, placed it in her bag. Then she looked at the folder. Her name was written on the outside in a hand she didn't recognize. Min-chul said, "He asked me to give that to you when you came back. He said he believed you would." She didn't open it yet. She looked at Min-chul, his dark eyes neutral, his suit without a wrinkle despite the hours, his face offering nothing beyond what was required. She said, "How long has he known about Hollis?" Min-chul said, "Since the second day." She absorbed that. And he let it continue. He needed the full chain. Names, payments, every transfer point, every signature. A pause. He did not plan for you to be inside it. She thought about the nursing station cart, Hollis's voice, her bag open on the cart surface, 16 people not meeting her eyes. She said, "But I was." Min-chul said, "Yes." She put the folder under her arm. She moved toward the service entrance, the cold pack secured in her bag, her father's watch ticking against her wrist, the broken clasp catching on her sleeve the way it had all week. She thought, 58 and dropping. She went in. Room 1214 was full. She hadn't expected that. 3 people who hadn't been there before occupied the chairs along the far wall. An elderly woman in a black silk dress, silver hair set in a precise bun, hands clasped in her lap. An elderly man in a charcoal wool suit, sitting straight with the deliberate posture of someone who has never quite learned to be at ease in chairs. And a third, older still, tiny, still as furniture, wearing traditional layered clothing in deep navy with silver thread, a jade bracelet on her wrist, watching the door from the moment it opened. Min-chul took position near the entrance without a sound. Do-yoon was in the bed. His glucose was at 54 now. She could see it from the doorway. His face held the particular composure of someone managing significant pain without permitting it any expression. He watched her enter without moving. Naomi set the cold pack on the side table. She drew the dose without asking anyone's permission and without explaining herself to anyone in the room. She administered the injection. She watched the monitor. 54 became 61. 61 became 69. 76. She held her exhale until 78. She let it out quietly, the same breath she had taken in this room the first night she stood over his monitor and waited for the numbers to climb. Then she opened the folder. The photographs were clear and time-stamped. Craig Hollis at a restaurant table, across from a man she had never seen. Korean, mid-40s, no expression. A phone face down on the table between them. Bank transfer records. A supply chain audit with Hollis's digital signature on every redirection. And on the last page, an internal memo on Voss Meridian letterhead. Dr. Rao's name on the signature line. An instruction to the supply team to hold all controlled substance deliveries to Suite 1214 pending documentation review. Dated the same day Hollis had stopped her cart. She stood with the documents in her hands. She said, "This is the full chain." Do-yoon said, "Every link." "How long have you had this?" "The last piece came in 2 hours ago." He paused. "The memo. I was waiting for the memo." She thought about the sidewalk, the cold, the beep of the keycard, the pharmacist who had recognized her voice. She thought about her mother, who had called twice while Naomi was at the pharmacy counter, and who she had not answered. She said, "You knew I would come back." "Yes." "Even after they suspended me?" "Especially then." He held her gaze without flinching. "I am sorry for the part of this that required you." She said, "Your apology and this folder don't cancel each other out." He said, "No, they don't." The monitor held steady at 81. Outside the window, the city moved with complete indifference to what was happening in the room. Then Do-yoon moved. Slowly. His glucose was still climbing. The weakness was still in him. He pushed the covers back. He set his feet on the floor. He stood. He was tall even now, even wearing the hospital robe with the IV line still running from his arm. The koi fish on his neck caught the warm light from the pendant lamp. The fish was mid-leap. He held the insulin vial in both hands, carefully, and he bowed. Not the brief acknowledgement of a man accustomed to being thanked. Not a gesture. A deep, formal bow. Back parallel to the floor, both hands lowering the vial toward the ground. The kind of bow that has weight in it, that costs something, that says something that cannot be unsaid. Behind him, his mother rose from her chair. She bowed, her silver hair, her clasped hands, her straight back lowering in a slow, certain arc. His father stood. He bowed, the charcoal suit creasing at the shoulder, the tie pin catching the light as he went down. The grandmother, the tiny, still woman who had not shifted in her chair since Naomi entered, unfolded herself slowly from the seat. She stood. She bowed. The jade bracelet slid along her small wrist as she went down, and the sound it made against her sleeve was the only sound in the room. Minchul bowed from his position at the door, one hand against the frame. The room held that moment. All 5 of them bowed. Naomi stood with the photographs in her hands and looked at them. She thought of the supply cart, the bag open on the surface. 16 people not meeting her eyes. The keycard beeping her out of the building she had come to for a clean start. Her mother's voicemail. Every version of this she had survived by being more competent than the situation allowed for, and being rewarded with a new obstacle every time. She thought, none of them are looking at my coat. She set the folder on the side table. She looked at Do-yoon, still bowed, still holding the vial. Waiting, she said, "Don't let your levels drop again." She reached for her father's watch on the bedside table, where she'd set it while drawing the dose. She hadn't noticed she'd put it down. She clasped it on her wrist. The broken clasp caught, turned, and held. It had never done that before. She walked out. In the VIP corridor, the amber light was the same as it had always been. Expensive, filtered, unhurried. She stood in it for a moment. She stood completely still. She breathed. A single, full breath, the kind that uses everything. She dialed her mother. Her mother answered on the first ring. They searched her bag in the middle of the nursing corridor. 16 people watched. She had nothing to hide, and they filed the report anyway. 8 days into a job she had fought years to earn. A keycard that beeped her out of the building before she had time to say goodbye to anyone. A suspension signed off by people who had decided on the outcome before the meeting began. And she still went back. Not because Do-yoon asked. Not because the folder promised to clear her name. Not because there was a deal on the table or a system she could trust. She went back because his glucose was 58 and dropping. Because there was no glucagon on the floor. Because she had carried that dextrose kit since her 2nd year of residency. Before she fully understood that emergencies happen where the supplies aren't. And she simply could not do the version of this where she went home. She called the pharmacy. She waited at the service entrance. She went in. And when it was over, when the monitor held steady and 5 people bowed in silence, and the folder sat on the side table with every name and every transfer point and every signature, she asked him only one thing. "You knew I would come back." "Yes. Even after they suspended me. Especially then." He had known since the first night. Since she had written the order and flagged the discrepancy and left without asking for anything. He had given Minchul his number to press into her hand at the nursing station. Not because he needed rescuing, but because he had already read her the way she read manuscripts, at the right angle, with enough patience to see what was actually there. He had waited for her to come back because he already knew she would, because that was the kind of woman she was, and because a man who understands what that kind of woman is worth does not waste her. There is a name for what Do-yoon did from the moment he asked to know her name. Not gratitude, not strategy. A biological drive, the deepest one a man carries, to find the woman he is willing to stand up for, and make sure she knows it. To be necessary to her. To protect her not because she is weak, but because she is exactly the kind of strong that deserves someone standing at the door. James Bauer spent years studying this, why some women become a man's complete and total obsession, and why other women, just as capable, just as worthy, get suspended by systems that were never built to see them. What he found is that the difference isn't credentials, or history, or how much you sacrifice. It is a specific instinct, buried in every man, that, once activated, makes him choose, completely, without hesitation, even from a hospital bed with an IV still running from his arm. He called it the hero instinct, and in his secret obsession, he teaches women the exact signals that trigger it. The QR code is on your screen right now. The link is also in the description and in the pinned comment below. His secret obsession, $49. 60-day guarantee. Instant access. You have been competent enough for long enough. It is time to be chosen. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been publicly accused of something you didn't do and still chose to do the right thing anyway because that was the only answer you could live with? Have you ever helped someone who, without telling you, already held the proof that would clear your name and had to decide whether that changes what they owe you? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, truth, and justice, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.